Welcome to Hot Topics After Dark with the inspired muse himself, leadership coach and author Jeffrey DeShawn. Let's get talking.
Hello, fams, faves, likes, and loves, and those souls I have yet to meet. This is Jeffrey DeShawn, the Inspired Muse, and we are here with a special episode of Hot Topics After Dark. I'm really excited about the guest that we have today. We have with us Mr. Adrian Dunn of the Adrian Dunn Singers, who is an amazing musician and composer and singer, but who's also an advocate for Black music and Black music education, and who is leading an amazing effort based out of Chicago, but really nationally. I think the way I put it, to really reclaim the Black experience within Black music in America. And I'm so excited. He is the founder, if I get it right, and creator of Black Music Matters. And I'm so excited to have him here with us today. Hello, Adrian. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Really happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. We've been talking about chatting for a minute, and I'm so excited that we get to chat and I get to share it with folks. I'm very excited to learn about your work last year and to actually have the experience of seeing both you and your singers and your collection of musicians live last year with the live recording. That was amazing. So let's start. I'm gonna let the folks tell us a bit about yourself and how you became a composer. First of all, when I learned that you were a you're a Black man, but that you were a composer, and then a couple things that dropped. Is like, oh, MacArthur Award recipient. What? That's like big stuff. You hear people got MacArthur grants. That's like big things. So how did all that happen? Like, how did you become a composer? Like, MacArthur grant? Like,
yeah. So I originally am from Cleveland, Ohio. And so when I was a kid, I loved music. I grew up singing at Starlight Missionary Baptist Church on Euclid Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. And I developed a love for music from the very beginning. I think I knew at a very young age that music was going to be a career choice for me, and had a lot of influences and choices, a lot of outside influences saying to me, you should want to be a doctor. You should be a lawyer. You should be all these other things. But I always felt, even at 6 years old, that I knew that music was a part of my destiny and was a part of my story. And so through that development, being in choir in elementary and then middle school, I met a Black choir director by the name of Glenn Brackens, who did the Vivaldi's Gloria with us, and I absolutely hated it. I definitely wanted to do Kirk Franklin instead. And I ended up doing this Vivaldi piece and realizing that I was pretty decent at classical singing. And so my mother put me in lessons in high school, and I toured with both choirs in high school and was a part of the Ohio All-State Choir, and I was also a part of the Cleveland Orchestra Youth Chorus Organization. And then I got a full scholarship to Interlochen Center for the Arts in Michigan, where I spent summers there. And I met the recruiter for the Music Conservatory at Roosevelt University, which is where I ended up going. And now I am a faculty member there, actually.
oh, wow.
At my alma mater here in downtown Chicago. I did my undergraduate there, and I completed my studies overseas at the Sibelius Academy of Music in Helsinki, and then came back and did my master's there in opera and in voice. And along that journey, I started writing music. I've always written music. I always wanted to write music from the time I was a kid. And so that journey led me to telling my story through music. And in 2011, my mother passed away of cancer after 15 years. And in that journey, not just being overseas and discovering composition and writing and getting more serious about composing, I realized that my stories that I was telling through opera, through my brand of opera, it's a hip hop opera called opera, that I wasn't just telling the stories of inequity and racial bias, but I was truly telling the story of America. I was telling the story of my people, and I was actualizing many of the things that I thought I was looking to find, that music was actually healing me. And music was actually defining me, and music was actually teaching me about my Blackness, and it was teaching me, healing me, teaching me, nourishing me in ways that I really needed to be nourished. And so that's my journey, that's my story. And so I got here and got to start Black Music Matters.
Wow. The healing power of music. I mean, it is truly, I felt it, you sort of talking about your journey and telling the story, you can feel it. You're almost like, even telling the story, it was so rhythmic in your flow. It's innately, truly part of you and your energy. And I truly believe that music is healing. I believe that music is a language. And particularly you being a composer, I think that, ultimately language is numeric in its breakdown, and music is numeric in its breakdown. And I think in some ways I see music as base code. And so I think that is miraculous in so many ways. And the fact that with Black Music Matters, I mean, you shared a piece, there was an article in the Chicago Defender about the Black Music Matters rally that you held recently, exposing racism in classical music. Now, we've had a couple conversations where you've educated me on some of the experiences, sort of, navigating into that special sector, I think, within the music space. I think many folks when you think about Black folks in music, folks kind of go, because we think of, the broader music industry, hip hop, pop, entertainment, soul.
Right.
But we don't think about, really, when you think about the roots of Black folks in music, that it really actually did come, many ways, laying the foundation, gospel and classical music. My grandfather was a gospel quartet singer and had the opportunity and recorded records early, in his young life as a young man, and was classically trained sort of through church and that way, and at home to play piano and music and different things. And so when I think about just from his lived experience and the racism from that side in the early days, being a quartet gospel group, and the stories he tells about traveling around with Sam Cooke, before, when he was singing gospel, I can only imagine now being at your level. I mean, the places that you've studied, the folks that you've worked with, you mentioned going and studying Helsinki, what that experience might have been like, and then particularly sitting in a city like Chicago. So tell us a bit about, why Black Music Matters, and particularly in this moment, I think we get a larger picture, but elevating that, amplifying that story about how racism has impacted folks, particularly within classical music.
So racism in classical music, I think, is unique in some ways. Obviously, the issue of racism is not unique, as it exists in every industry. But in the classical music industry, it is a particularly insidious brand of racism, in my personal opinion, because I believe that it is absolutely in the direct DNA or bloodline of many white Eurocentric composers that are in what we call the canon of repertoire. So Wagner and Richard Strauss, and even back to Shostakovich and the Russian composers. And we all know the history of the German of Germany, and I think we all know that line of German composers is primarily the way that most classical singers are taught, through the German conservatory model. And in my opinion, that model breeds this idea or myth of white supremacy, and what I really like to call white terrorism. That is absolutely what it is.
Okay, I mean, you got to speak truth to life.
I mean, we're at a point right now in our society and within our culture where all of our collective lies are coming to haunt us. And in my opinion, this is a moment where classical music has to deal with and reckon with, or it will not be. And not because regular folks don't deal with classical music, because Black artists now are opening up their mouths and saying that if it means that I have to lay down my culture, I don't want to do this. And for me, I had that revelation some 15 years ago when I had my first professional job with the Chicago Symphony Chorus, as well as with the Grand Park Symphony Chorus. I recognized that in that moment, I had waited my entire life and trained so hard and studied, and I knew all the composers, and I knew the work. I knew the conductors. I knew the orchestra. I knew everything I thought at that time. But one of the things I did not account for was in that training was for me to walk into those spaces and be greeted by that insidious brand of racism, from conductors to fellow colleagues and singers, to be objectified as a Black queer man in those spaces was devastating. And in that moment, I knew that I was not personally built for the opera and classical traditional industry complex. I knew that I had to build my own thing. I knew that I had to do for my people what I wanted to do, as in I was not comfortable singing for white audiences every night. I'm not judging my fellow colleagues who are. I am not. So let me be really, really clear, because I know sometimes people can misinterpret words as to include other people.
It happens.
For myself and my personal decision to walk away from an industry that treated me like trash. And I refused, because I believed at that moment that this industry was incomplete. The conversation about music education and Black children was incomplete without people like myself who were able to walk away and have that economic and financial freedom from the industry to then later come back and tell the industry that this is the right way to do it and this is the wrong way. And so my hope and my prayer is that my last album is called Redemption, dedicated to Black men murdered by police. Every single piece, they are all spiritual arrangements and gospel arrangements that talk about redemption and the life that each one of these young men deserved that they did not get on this side. And my work with Black Music Matters is very similar in the regard that this redemption that I'm talking about with Black Music Matters is redemption that has been some 400 years in the making. It's the redemption that composers like William Grant Still, composers like George Walker, composers like Bill Banfield, and people who we don't even know, composers like Anthony Davis, right, who's written the opera Malcolm X and wrote the opera Amistad and wrote the opera The Central Park Five that just won a Pulitzer Prize, that we as Black people don't even know his name. That is highly problematic. And not just that Black people don't know his name, but that the white opera industry does not do his work in the way that they should. I am at this point talking about advocacy because I, as a Black business owner in the entertainment industry, I understand that so many Black folks and white folks are unaware of our realities as artists. We're unaware of the economic disparities. We're unaware that the conductor at the Lyric Opera of Chicago gets paid $1.8 million a year in a city where Black folks can't average income.
Say what?
So, Sir Andrew Davis is the conductor of the Lyric Opera Orchestra here in Chicago, Lyric Opera Chicago. And his salary is $1.8 million a year. The conductor of the Chicago Symphony, I believe, is more than that. Ricardo Muti, right? And in every major American city, including Washington, D.C., including the Kennedy Center.
Talk about it.
I'm not singling out Chicago as we are unique. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
We're talking about...
It's systemic. It's systemic. It's institutional. It's enculturated in the very fabric of how these industries operate and how people, it sounds like how people are trained and developed and allowed to position themselves and to advance in their career and craft, it sounds like.
Absolutely, while locking other Black folks out. The Black conductors that we have in the United States are second to none. They're amazing. The older Black conductors like Michael Morgan and Thomas Wilkins and the list goes on, to the younger conductors like Roger Cox and Kedrick Armstrong and Kellen Gray, like these guys who are colleagues and friends of mine who oftentimes don't get the same credit. If the only names that we know are Ricardo Muti, or the only names that we know sound like European descendants, I would imagine that we have work to do. And again, if we are wanting for Black folks to have high quality arts and entertainment that features and centers Blackness in the story, well, then we have to have our own spaces. We have to continue to fight and educate both around advocacy, which is why Black Music Matters exists, is to make sure that when Black artists are taken advantage of and when things happen to them, that there is a unified voice of folks who can speak about it, because we are professionals in that space. We already have collective years of experience that you cannot tear us down when we speak that truth to power. And again, it is absolutely connected to the economics. It's absolutely connected to dismantling miseducation for years about the role that Black artists play in our community, as well as the contributions that we have given the world to this point. And so I want to be sure that as we're having these conversations, I want to be sure that as we talk about economic growth and development, that we don't forget, I believe, some of the most important Black folks that we have in this country, which are our artists and our creatives, our musicians, the people who birth our culture day in and day out and continue to maintain our cultural identity, not just here in America, but also throughout the world. We have given the world the greatest gift, because I believe music is indeed the Holy Spirit. I believe music is the Holy Spirit. I think what we have given the world is something that we have never not just gotten credit for, but also we as Black folks, I think oftentimes don't truly understand the gift that we are. And so Black Music Matters is not just about, tearing down white systems and focusing on white systems. It's also about affirming Black artists and Black musicians first and foremost.
Ooh, yes. I know folks are going to see and understand why I've been wanting to have this conversation and why I've you bring a perspective and a breath and sort of just a breath of life around an issue that I think folks really just don't sort of connect to the understanding of why it's of importance, right? And, there's certain things that people sort of put on the back burner when you sort of prioritize issues in the realm of sort of racism and fighting sort of systemic oppression. For me, this is such an important one. It's on the lines of, I find it sort of parallel, work, part of the universe of work that's happening at the Smithsonian under Lonnie Bunch, with the African American Museum of History and Culture, for example, and this effort to really, from an institutional perspective, force an acknowledgement of the erasure, right? The taking of, right, the suppression of Black art and entertainment and culture. And it's important because at the end of the day, when we reflect back in time, right, that gives us perspective of life in a moment, we look to history. And very often, what is history grounded in, right? What are the pieces of fabrics of either the hard artifacts, or the stories that tell? It comes through art. And very often it's through music. And so that cultural imprint that happens through art and music that really lays a foundation for the future is so key. And at a moment like this, we can't ignore the pieces that have of our, the pieces of our existence and our work, our art, our music, that has been a huge part of that. And the fact that for me, you haven't just said, hey, industry, classical music, hey, music entertainment industry, you need to let us at the table. We so good at let us at the table, let my voice be heard. You said, no, I'm gonna call you out, and then I am going to build my own table. I'm gonna build my own platform. I'm going to amplify the voices of my own people and call you out at the same time.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think we have to, walk and chew gum, right? We have to be able to do both. I don't think that it's enough for Black people to repair the institutions that oppress us, and that just be the work. That the work is just building more white institutions and making those institutions more Black tolerant.
Woo! Say it again. Can you say that for me again? Can you
No, I think that, the whole idea is that many of us are working in white institutions, including myself, where we are expected just to repair institutions that have oppressed us. And I think we have to do more than just repair those institutions. We have to actually create new models. We have to create new ways. And educate our own folks, right, about the value of who we are, that our value complex around our assets as a community is oftentimes out of order. Our priority, right, are the things that we prioritize oftentimes, because I believe we as Black folks often have been in a place of a scarcity mindset. And so I think in that scarcity mindset, many of the things that actually are worth the most end up going out the door first. We are so focused on those necessities, those essential things that a lot of us feel like or have been taught are extra. Our music is an extra. Music is something that, is non-essential. And may not pay the bills, and it may not this, and it may not that, right? And we've all heard those tropes before, but I believe that this work has to be about changing that narrative. This work really does have to be about helping our people understand and unearth the horrible treatment that many of us Black artists go through on a daily basis inside of these white institutions.
Yes, so true. And the words you say about really owning our value, owning our value. And I think that's, it starts there, because if you know your value, own your value, then you're willing to do the work to manifest the courage to tell your true and authentic story. And that requires, speaking truth, to life, right? Calling it out as it is, even in the face of criticism, even in the face of, restricted access to economic opportunity, advancement, business opportunities, collaboration opportunities. We know all that happens. But I think particularly in these moments where we are dealing with, a national reckoning around race in America, and really, an acknowledgement globally that I think it is so important as Black people in America that we not just celebrate the acknowledgement, right? The celebration. America knows how to do a celebration, baby. Okay, look over here. We celebrating you. Woo. Okay, but now what are we going to do to actually build and create new pathways, new opportunities, new systems that allow the full inclusion and involvement of our whole selves, not as you just want to see us, not as your merchandising says is relevant for this particular commercial period, but as we actually are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I want to thank you so much for this little snapshot. Is just you gave us so much in this brief conversation. I hope that we might be able to have you back. We're doing on part of our education conversation with Dr. Kimberly Morton, also talking about how the Black music education aspect of it and the developmental piece for our children that many of our children are missing out on so many levels. I could go into a whole spiel from the coaching perspective around the neurological developmental benefits of studying music early. And those kinds of things and what that investment can do. So we'd love to have you back and participate in that conversation as well.
Awesome.
So tell us what's coming up next for Black Music Matters. You just had the virtual rally. How can folks find you? How can folks tap in?
Yeah, so it will be really great. So we have our Facebook page, which is Black Music Matters, and also our Instagram page, which is Black Music Matters Now. And if you go there, you'll be able to find kind of the latest of what we have. We are preparing for our very big first inaugural Black Music Matters Summit on the first weekend of October. With a flurry of amazing guest speakers and performances. And so the Black Music Matters Summit will actually be live on our new streaming platform called BME, and that will be the first weekend in October. And so we'll definitely be having more updates about that as we move forward.
Awesome. So exciting. So thank you so much, Adrian. This is Adrian Dunn of the Adrian Dunn Singers and Black Music Matters. You can go to adriandunn.com. I encourage you to do so. There's music available, downloadable, amazing, soul-stirring musical work, as well as some also really movement inspiring merchandising. So support our Black businesses. Black entrepreneur here. And so please, adriandunn.com. And so thank you again for joining us. This is Jeffrey DeShawn, the Inspired Muse, with this episode of Hot Topics After Dark. We'll see you next time.